Right, so let's start to break things down and see how it all played out and what it means for the future of the NDC now that they've chosen this relatively fresh team to lead them over the next 4 years. To help us get all the nuances and the little details and what to look out for, we're very happy to have with us a senior lecturer from the School of Political Science, Dr. Seydou Alidu, no stranger to our show. Doc, nice to see you.
Thank you so
Thanks so much for making the time. Looking very Pan-African today. I like it.
Thank you.
Right, so you obviously followed the events of the weekend. Yeah. I want to start from the results, okay, and then we'll go back and talk about some of the other significant events. So now we have this this team that Anita D'Souza is quite concerned to see a certain diminishing in the significance of the Volta representation. Is she onto something? Is there something to be concerned about here?
Okay, first of all, I think we have some executive members from the Volta region. If you look at, I think the Deputy National youth organizer, Agbanu, and I think another deputy position. Maybe what she wanted to say was that they don't have a critical, influential position that's reserved for people from the Volta region. But I don't think it is. I'm not saying we should dismiss it. It's a concern, and in political science terms, we need to pay attention to concerns of those kind. What I do think is critical is the role Volta region will still play to the success of the NDC in the 2020 elections. What's more important was the fact that this particular decision was made by delegates, including delegates from the Volta region. Yeah. And they were not appointed or nominated or selected. They were actually voted for, including delegates from the Volta region. So what I do see now is the fact that the people from Volta region are becoming very critical, that even if we have one of our own contesting, and we still think there are more credible, better people to lead the party to victory, then we are going to go for them. So basically this has to do with a kind of collective rationality. They are thinking about the collective interest of the party rather than the interest of one particular individual from where we come from. So when I look at this, I think it's a positive sign of mature democracy where we're actually looking at the collective interests of the political party and electing people that are better competent than person from somebody from our own region. So that is a plus for the delegates if they actually decided to vote that way. Okay,
now Mr. Ekos Piogabra, since he started his campaign, has been repeating a certain point that the constituency elections saw a lot of replacement of the old guard, particularly in the Volta region. He points to this as a signal that the party wants new leadership at all levels. Of course, he says that to support his own bid to run for a flag bearer. But I wonder whether these results perhaps in some way support that theory. If the people of the Volta region have decided that, you know what, what's the point of just choosing people who come from our region? What's the point of that? Don't we just rather want people who can do a better job? Is this a signal that perhaps in the Volta region in particular, the voter may no longer be interested in just voting for that traditional choice of one of us, one of us, one of us? Is that a signal of that perhaps in the 2020 election?
Yeah, I think this thing started even way back in 2012, the whole concept of rational voter behavior. If you look at the dynamics of the 2012 elections, it came out, it featured prominently, especially in terms of what we call ticket splitting, where voters vote for one particular candidate from a different political party at the parliamentary level and shift their vote at a different political party at the presidential level. So I think in the 2012 election, we had about, I think up to 24% of that kind of ticket splitted rational voter behavior. Then in the 2016 election, it actually increased. If you look at the stat, I think by 2 or 3 more seats.
Right.
So generally speaking, the voter behavior of Ghanaian electorates are beginning to change. They are more focused on sometimes looking at the collective rather than the individual. It is also part of rationality to look inward, what we call the egotropic rationality, where people decide to vote for a specific candidate based on the gains that they'll get as an individual.
Yeah.
But also, majority of the people are now beginning to reflect on the collective benefit of the NDC as a political party. If I vote for somebody that speaks like me, or behaves like me, or worship like me, but that person is not competent enough to be able to meet the contextual challenge moving forward into 2020, then we're going to be in opposition.
Right.
So I think what the thing that's coming up from Volta region is actually a kind of snowballing effect that's developing from the national electoral behavior of our citizens.
Right.
And I think if there's something to go by, whether it will affect the presidential election that NDC will have, is still something we have to think about. But even if you look at the current crop of executives, it's a kind of a blend between relatively old people who are grassroots people and then very new, younger, dynamic, active kind of badge. But that also has a lot to do when you are looking at the chances of the NDC moving forward. There are three kind of level of competence.
Right.
When you are looking at the dynamics moving to 2020, what we call the personal competence level, the group competence level, and then the contextual competence level. The personal competence level has to do with what the candidates who are contesting to lead the party brings on board. Academic qualification, being a grassroots person, being a party member, being a financier, being a hardworking person, whatever it is, it has to do with your personal competence. And that is what has brought some of them to this particular position that they are holding as at this morning. But the other has to do with the group competence. How are they able to work together as a team? Because no matter how good you are as an individual, you can't work alone. You have to work with other people. As an executive member, you have to work with party members. You have to work with people who are even not members of your political party. So the second has to do with how these individual competent elected executives work together. But the third has to do with the whole concept of the context. We are moving into 2020. We are going to contest with MPP. The MPP also has a very formidable team. How do we battle it out? What kind of leadership, what kind of leader are we going to elect? And how is it going to withstand the current performance of the performance of this current government? We always say every election is a referendum on the performance of the incumbent. Even if you have a very formidable team and the government is doing well, will that translate into winning an election? There are other dynamics as well. So basically speaking, moving forward, I think they have elected a rather dynamic team made up of both old and new, kind of regionally spread. If you look at almost all the regions have a little bit of representation, Muslims, Christians, age-wise, and then geographical spread. What they have to do is now to maximize their individual competence and bring it to the group level so that they can work together as a strong, formidable team and then be able to do well in 2020.
Are there any in this new team that you see to be not Mahama men or women?
I think it was, indirectly, it was one of the qualification criteria for winning these executive elections. When I mentioned the group competence, the group competence doesn't have to do with how you are able to relate and work in a group, but it also has to do with the kind of individual you identify yourself with in the presidential race, indirectly. So you see that at the last part of the elections, people who pretended they were neutral had to come forward and say, oh, we support this person or we don't support that person. And you know, definitely those groups will influence the way delegates vote.
Right.
So I still think that this was just a dress rehearsal of what's going to come in the presidential election. And I know all the presidential candidates did whatever possible they could to influence the climate of opinion in their favor moving forward. And I think the best candidate that's able to influence more is the one who has won.
I see. Now, in terms of, let's do this exercise now, in terms of competence, track record, with no reflection on which one party is better than the other. We're not interested in that, just the individuals. I want us to put the winners of the NDC race against those who won for NPP. So we can do chairman, we can do general secretary, and then we could do organizer, national organizer, and perhaps communication. Starting with the chairman, how do they stack up against each other?
So if you look at the MPP's chairman, he's a veteran politician. He's been there since time immemorial, has had the benefit of working with other political parties. has risen up to the position of, I think, Deputy Speaker of Parliament on the ticket of the, was it CPP? And then all of a sudden he became an MPP and then won the chairmanship. So if it has to do with political experience. He is neck deep involved. He has seen different regimes changed. He has witnessed strategy and all those things. So in terms of experience, if you match his political experience to that of the currently elected NDC chairman, you see that he's a little bit ahead in terms of his involvement in party politics. Strategy, I have witnessed him. Sorry, he was actually the acting chairman for the MPP before the 2016 elections.
That's right.
And you could say that if the party was able to win, it means his strategy was best.
But was it really down to him?
Not really. It was a group effort. So even as we pay so much attention to individual competence, we also have to relate it to the group competence, how you are able to work within a group as an individual. So if you look at it from that particular position, you say that, fine, his competence, his strategy was best because they won. But if you look at his re-election bid as the chairman, he actually struggled. It wasn't very easy for him. If you look at the margin of votes between him and then the next candidate that followed him, you realize that it was very close to call. So that particular event alone will call into question the kind of competence and then leadership skills that he's going to bring moving into 2020. People will actually say that it wasn't more about his strategy that won the MPP 2016, but it was more about Ghanaians being fed up with what was happening in the NDC government. If you compare him to Ofosu Ampofo, he's a true hardcore party guy, because people thought even Fred Blay wasn't a party person. He just caused the carpet to be able to take advantage of the opportunity that presented itself. Ampofo is a grassroots man. He has related very well with him from his, if you look at how he rose from being a minister. I think he's been an MP before, I'm not very sure, but Minister for Local Government.
He's been an assemblyman, he's been a
member of Parliament.
MC, he's been an MP, Deputy Minister, Vice President.
There was a chair of the, what's the name? The NDC selection. Was he the chair or the chairman of the NDC?
See, I was thinking about John Mahama. You were
I'm still talking about Ofosu Ampofo as the chairman. I'm comparing him to Fred Blay.
Yes, he was a DCE under Rawlings. Then he was made minister under Tamils. Yes.
And then I think the last election that we had, he was the leader or chair of the NDC selection committee or whatever it was called. So people will use that against him because, one, they lost the election and he had to play a very critical role. But that wasn't just an individual task, it was a collective task. I look at him as a very young, dynamic, compared to Fred Blay actually, as a very young, dynamic, active individual who is going to inject a little bit of youth activism and then fresh dynamics into the way the executive of the NDC is going to move. And if he's able to provide that critical leadership that's needed, you will not even be able to pay so much attention to the weakness of the weakest person within the group. So his leadership is very critical in that particular regard. In terms of strategy against him and Fred Blay, I will not be able to analyze him because he hasn't superintended over any presidential election. But looking at the way he's able to beat these big wigs, Betumole Drisu, Dan Abudapi, Hudu Yahya, and all those people who are old guys in the NDC, you see that if he's able to translate and magnify this kind of strategy to the national level, it's really going to help the NDC that much.
All right, let's quickly go through a few of the others. John Bwedu versus General Mosquito.
They are all veterans. They've all held their political positions before, in opposition, but also in government. Asedu Nketia is reputed to have said that all the mosquito repellents that we have in this country has not been able to terminate him. He's a very hard working individual who has carved a niche for himself in terms of political dispensation in this country. People see him as a strategist, even though people still think because the NDC lost, he didn't play his role very well. And I'll say refer to that concept of a group responsibility rather than individual. John Bwedu is a very nice guy, and I think they are very good friends. So when it comes to that particular level, I think they will be at par. So what will be the distinctive factor is how each one of these individuals are able to translate their individual competence to the group level and even beyond the NDC as a political party, so that they can attract floating voters and be able to make it a success for their political parties in 2020.
Organizers. So we have Samia Oku on one side and what's his name? Is it Akamba who won for the NDC?
I don't know so much about Akamba, but I do know a lot about Samia Oku. Samia Oku is a very nice man who is able to mobilize. You know, he's done it in the past as the youth organizer, and he's a very great strategist and has been able to work so well with the grassroots. People have worked so well with him, says he's a very good guy. He's very welcoming. He picks his calls, he returns calls, and then he's able to work. I think the elections in this country, I think from 2012, has now becoming more of a youth thing than an older gen. It's more generational, but I think the voter population is now, we are now getting more youthful voter populations than we used to have. And there is a different strategy for targeting this kind of voter population compared to the elections that we've had at the beginning of the Fourth Republic. And Sami has been able to use these tools very well, including social media, including, electronic campaigning and all those things. If he's able to maintain that and even improve upon that moving into 2020, it's going to be a very difficult activity for the NDC. And the newly elected chairman made reference to the fact that they have to campaign differently and they have to make good use of social media and then all these other electronic devices. Akamba has to do a little bit of a match if it has to do with that level of competence.
Is he capable? I mean, what do we know about him? He was deputy organizer for the last 4 years, but didn't quite come to prominence in that role. I'll be honest with you, first time I heard of him was when he went to campaign to children.
That's what I was also going to say. That was the first time I've heard of him, when this whole secondary school campaign thing came out. And I think he has to prove beyond all reasonable doubt that he's cut for the job and then be able to team together, because mobilization is very crucial. If you look at one of the reasons that contributed to the defeat of the NDC in 2016 was very poor mobilization. The ability to mobilize, especially the youth and then the student leadership from their various campuses back to their constituencies to vote. The NDC did it poorly, even though they were even incumbent. So you need a kind of organizer that's able to mobilize all these shade of opinion and then youthful groups and be able to integrate them to be able to achieve the kind of objective that the party needs to achieve moving into 2020. If they fail to do that, then it's going to be another disaster. And I think Samia Oku has been able to demonstrate in the past that he's competent and be able to move them from where they are to wherever they're going to vote. And I think what he has to do is to improve upon what they did in 2016. And what Akamba has to do is to work closely with people who have been in those particular positions and people who have the competence that he lacks, so that he'll be able to gel the executive as a team, and then that mobilization can help them be able to win.
Finally, Sami Gyamfi, elected communications officer, versus Yawabing Samoa, who is an appointed communications director for the NPP.
I think Sami Gyamfi is a very articulate guy. He's very articulative. And one thing people have said about him is just that he's relatively new compared to maybe someone like Fred Agbenu, who has been in that particular position, who has been a grassroots person, all those things. But what came up strongly from the indicators I have picked is the fact that Gyamfi had a lot of bigwigs supporting him, regardless of he being a new entrant, and was able to marshal a huge difference between him and Fred. But that's still notwithstanding, he's a very nice guy, very articulative. He can argue in a very rational manner and then logical conclusions and all those things. The NPP's communication, appointed communication, is a well-known guy. He's very good, a lawyer by profession. He has done this work before. So I think if you look at that particular level, maybe in terms of experience, you rank the NPP a little bit higher than the NDC. But in terms of match for argument and then logical conclusion and then factual evidence, I think they're going to be at par. And their ability to perform well as individuals will depend on the support that they get from their political party membership.
Do you see Sami Gyamfi being perhaps the next Ofosu Kwachi Fosu?
Yes, if he's able to play his cards well and then the NDC eventually get elected, he's given an executive position, I think he's going to be as fluent and articulative as
Okay. Now
Felix.
let's talk about the event itself. Last night we saw. Well, in fact, I say last night. The thing began on Saturday.
Two days.
Yes, and my goodness, they took their time. The voting just went on and on and on. That was the longest period, and then of course there was the sorting and then the counting, which normally does take some time. There was nothing unique about how long the sorting and counting took, especially bearing in mind the size of their electoral college. But the voting just went on and on and on. But the party themselves have been quite brutish in their defense of how long it took. I want to read to you what James Ajenim Boateng said, former deputy information minister. James Ajenim Boateng said on his Facebook page, "The NDC did not promise to organize the fastest Congress ever held in Ghana. We promised to organize the most credible and transparent Congress to elect our national officers, and that is what we've done. The starting point for any complaint in this matter, if any, is for one to show that she or he is either a member of the NDC or at the very least sympathetic to its cause. It is not for NPP people and partisan neutrals to tell NDC members how to elect our leaders. We are not going to take that kind of lecture from our political opponents." Thoughts?
I don't think he should have argued that way, because not only people who came to witness or cover this event actually expressed this worry, but even delegates themselves. I listened to one particular guy interviewed on Joy FM, and he said they are from Boahafo region, they had no place to sleep and all those things. I think it's one of the listening kind of skill they will have to adopt moving forward.
Well, he says he's willing to listen to NDC complaints.
But it's not only NDC people who
political opponents
who vote in the elections in this country. And I even think it is more important to listen to people who are not NDC people more than NDC people, because there are some NDC people, no matter what, they will still vote or abstain. But you need to convince people who are not your members to be able to understand what you do and why you do those things. So that
he says they are political opponents, even neutrals. He calls them opponents.
I think, you see, the expansion of the electoral college should have come with a little bit of decentralization of the voting system. So if you used to have maybe 6,000 people voting, and then you've increased it to like 9,000 people, you definitely will understand that if 9,000 people are going to vote at one particular big event like this, it's going to be very difficult, especially given the time that people usually will not stick to time because of things beyond their control, and maybe the level of scrutiny that will go into who is able to cast his vote or her vote and all those things. I think moving forward, they just have to listen and understand that maybe it was a successful Congress, wonderful people being elected, but there are still some challenges that they need to address. And one of the challenges is the manner that the conference was organized. I think moving forward, a more expanded electoral college should come with a kind of decentralized voting system, so that maybe in the next year that we're going to have the 10th Congress, maybe each region should vote in their region. Every region, the delegates should vote within the regional capital. Then they can compile the vote and have a national level results. If you do that, if I come and cast my vote, I'm going back to my house to sleep. That will even save them cost of maybe helping delegates to move from wherever they are to a specific location, maybe food, accommodation, and all the stress that will come with it. If you allow people to vote at their respective regional level, that's going to bring a lot of joy, but that's also going to kill one of the serious factors that's crippling into our body politic. The whole concept of campaign delegates and giving them inducement to be able to vote in a way. Fine, people may be able to do it across all the 10 regions, but it is going to be increasingly difficult to be able to influence them at the same time that they are voting throughout the country than when they are all located at one particular venue within a specific time period. So I think one of the things we need to understand, you are not only supposed to be listening more when you are in government, but even when you are in the position, you're supposed to even listen more than people who are in government, so that people will now oppose back the confidence that they have lost in you previously and be able to dance with you to be able to achieve the aim that you want to achieve.
Right. Now, some of the defenses that we've heard from the NDC members are actually not even to say that, oh, we were wrong, but you don't have the right to criticize, but rather to say that this is absolutely normal and that there's nothing wrong with it taking 2 days for us to vote and choose our leaders. Because if you go to the Labour conference in Brighton, it'll probably be a week or so that you'll be there. I don't know if that's a valid point in your
I think
eyes.
we should take the steps to improve on what is normal. Do you understand? If it's a normal thing to do, and you are able to improve upon the normal and do it in a more enhanced, better short period, then that's a plus for you in terms of strategy and organization. And people definitely think that, oh, NDC is doing things differently. NDC is not just like the ordinary political parties that do things the normal way. So I think normal argument is good, but we have to perform beyond normal. And I think we should not just say, okay, fine, I agree with you within the context of what happened 2 days. We are not saying 2 days not okay, but there is an opportunity for the NDC as a political party to improve on this particular, the way that they have organized their conference. So that moving forward, we see that NDC is doing things differently from all the other political parties. And political parties will definitely want to emulate that kind of example. So it's normal, but they can still improve over it and make things better and distinguish themselves in the way they conduct their business as a political party from any other political party in this country.
I mean, to be fair, when you go to the Labour conference, people don't stay up overnight. They finish at a certain time, they go to their hotels, they come back, they continue with this next day's activity. Voting happens in a fixed period of time. They time it, it works, everybody gets the chance to vote. There are some who describe in some newspapers this morning, they describe it as chaotic NDC confab, because it appears that the way in which the voting was done could have been more efficient. I mean, forget about the collating and the counting, the voting itself. Could that have been improved?
I agree there's always room for improvement, no matter what you do. If you look at this athlete who ran, if he's able to set a new record of maybe 6.5, his next intention is to reduce that record back to, he's still the record holder, but he competes with his sums and tries to beat the record that he's able to set. We are not saying this conference was well organized, everything went well, it was successful. But what lessons have they learned from it? And what are the challenges and what are people saying? Definitely people will criticize them for just not being happy the way it was organized. But there are people who are also very discerning and mean well for the success of the NDC as a political party. So I think they should listen and then be able to improve upon what they have been able to do. That was Saturday and Sunday. And then moving forward, we should be able to have a better, well-organized thing. I think it's basically, you know, the NDC and the NPP always do what they do in comparison to the other political party. I think it is high time they started to do things differently, regardless of what the other political parties do. Be innovative and then change the way politics is organized in this particular country, because they are technically the vehicles through which our democracy rides on. And their improvement will definitely improve the collective way we practice democracy in this country.
So we've seen the NDC deploy the largest electoral college in sub-Saharan Africa, am I right? 9,000 delegates. Is this an improvement, or was it worth it, you know, to go with the bigger electoral college?
I think anything that allows more citizens to participate in the decision-making process is good for democracy. There may be initial challenges at the beginning, like what we have experienced. But I think moving forward, if they are able to decentralize that process, then most of these challenges can be overcome. I think what's more crucial is the fact that when you give the people so much say in the decision-making process, they tend to value their participation and they want to participate more. But if you want to circumscribe the extent to which they can make decisions and participate in the decision-making process, they look at everything as executive-led, and then they will leave the executive to lead the party. But if you involve them and then something happened, they can't blame the executive because they made the decisions in the first place. And I think this whole concept of citizens participating and playing greater role came up strongly in the kind of amendments that they wanted to do. You know, they were seeking to have the communications, but also the finance position being nominated rather than electable. And then conference was unanimous in saying that we need to have the people make a determination on who should occupy this place, no matter how skilled, no matter how specialized it is. So I think moving forward, Ghanaians are gradually claiming back what belongs to them in terms of the democratic processes. And if you seem not to give them the opportunity, the way it's going to erupt, you will not like it. So I think expanding the college and making them have more greater say, having a greater say is better for democracy within the NDC, but also collectively at the national level. And I think that's good.
As long as they can keep
Manage
the time, right?
Yeah, manage it actually.
Yes. Okay. So now we've already talked about what Kospio Gabra said about how congresses last longer in other parts of the world. Now, so now we see the team. Now they are yet to pick a flag bearer, but most people seem to think that is a foregone conclusion. Are you one of those people?
Yes, because I've seen about 3 to 4 different surveys which has been done in relation to who is going to lead the party, and I think all of them points to one particular candidate. I'm not sure whether these newly elected executives will be able to organize that kind of election next month, or it's going to be somewhere early next year. But you are also looking at the time that's involved between these survey predictions and then what's going to happen. Because in elections, the dynamics may change. But if you're looking at all the candidates, these are all experienced people who have a lot to offer the party. But among them, one person definitely stands tall. He has been a former president and he has done a lot, and the people relate so much to him. And the whole concept of marketing him is not going to be that difficult. And if you look at some of the issues that was used against him in the 2016 elections, he's able to redeem some of them. But also the fact that when we elect a new government, you see that most of the things that the NDC used to say, if you think I'm corrupt and I'm not able to prosecute people, give me evidence. The current president has repeated the same thing in South Africa.
Yeah.
You understand? So if you look at the whole concept of corruption and corruptibility, the scale at which Nana Akufo-Addo stood 2016 is not the same scale he's going to stand in 2018. So what people just think is the fact that give John Mahama the opportunity to be able to lead the NDC again, and we'll see what will happen. And also one of the serious issues that came up in the defeat of the NDC's the NDC in 2016 was the disconnect between government and party. People thought John Mahama and his people were running their own show and the party was being staffed and wasn't doing well. If you look at the amendments they did in this conference, it was creating a 13-member body that's able to serve as a link between government and party. So I think they are implementing some of the serious issues that came out from the Kwesi report. And if they are able to do that, I think John Mahama deserves a second chance if you really want to have a go at it. But what may happen is that if he's able to win, then the person that he's going to pick to partner him should be a person that should be able to lead the NDC into 2024 elections. Because if he wins this election, it means just going for one term. And it's going to take another time to go to market a different candidate. If that candidate is not the same candidate as the one he made. So if I look at the evidence from the surveys that have been done, it all points to the victory of John Mahama, not just a minor victory, but I think it's a kind of widening victory that most of these surveys have predicted. And I still think the kind of applause that he got when his name was mentioned to address the conference and all those things speak to, it may be misleading, but it speaks to the kind of, favor he's likely going to get from the people who are going to vote. All the other candidates are competent, but the decision is in the hands of the people who are going to vote.
Now you noticed that getting to the end of the event, they started singing and playing Mahama songs, you know. Now, for a party that is bent on fostering unity, and bearing in mind the reality of the fact that there are other, runners in this race, was that the right thing to do?
I think some time passed, Professor Alabi raised this issue about playing neutral songs in party events rather than a specific song that's meant to boost the opposition. But you know, these people, the technicians and the organizers, they all have sizes, you know. So once they begin to get the opportunity, they want to prove that their candidate is the best. I think what the NDC need moving forward is not so much about unity. Unity is important, but I think the different shade of opinion. You see, a political party is an amalgamation of different shades of opinion and character. And it is very difficult to have that kind of unity. There can be a semblance of a sort. What's more important is whatever team is constituted able to build consensus. And sometimes if you seem to all agree on one particular thing, a very dominant character can bring a misleading idea and you all agree on it.
Yeah.
But where you are supposed to disagree to some extent, it helps shape the party, refine the party, put people on their toes, and they are able to work so well. So disagreements in some cases are very good for democracy than holistic unity that may not serve a good purpose. What they should be able to do moving forward is the fact that no matter how different they are, they should be able to build consensus on what is right and what is not right. And I think if somebody in the party can point his finger at John Mahama's face and say, what you are doing is not right, you have failed the party and all those things, it motivates John Mahama to want to do better and want to prove people like that wrong. But if they all think, oh, you are doing well when he's not doing well, it's going to be a big disaster. So I think moving forward, they should build consensus rather than seeking unity. It will never happen.
Right. Now, to my mind, there is one more decision that this party needs to make, but it is probably the most important decision regarding their long-term future. And that is the decision of running mate.
Yeah.
Since you tend to ascribe to the view that it's a foregone conclusion is going to be John Mahama, what will be going through his mind as he figures out who replaces Emisatha?
I think, one, it has to do with the challenge they have before them. He has to satisfy a lot of party interests, a lot of the dynamics that has characterized the way we select running mates in this country. Usually, in the past, they used to pay attention to this kind of regional balance between southern candidate and then a northern candidate. But we've seen over the years that sometimes, though it works, but it usually not, people don't pay so much attention to it, even though sometimes people raise it up. So the regional balance is important. People even focus on religion, which is also, we've had 2 Christians winning elections in this country. So it's significant, but it's not that necessary. But what he has to do is to please a lot of bigwigs. The way they are going to vote next month or next year is going to give him one of the clues. The people who are contesting him, most of them may be a fine, most of them will be great for a pick as a running mate. But also, you see, this whole issue about Anita D'Souza saying every people are not well presented. You see, those kind of things are dynamic he has to pay so much attention to. But moving forward, I think all these are factors. He should pay attention to, one, somebody who is more competent, somebody he is able to work with, and somebody who is a presidential material moving forward, who can lead the party to victory in the next election after the NDC is able to win 2020. So I think there's still a lot of factors that he has to consider, a lot of consultation he has to do. But at the end of the day, the ultimate decision lies on him. He should pick somebody that he's able to work with, somebody who is able to answer the 77 questions or 100 questions but we will pose in the next elections and what have you.
You know, you mentioned someone he's able to work with. In the end, with all these factors, and there are so many,
yes,
you know, who will please the big wigs, who will represent the ethnic or regional balance, who will represent the youth, or will he be aiming to represent the youth or the old guard? You know, the big wigs, who are they? They are certainly not usually the youth.
Yes.
You know, with all of these confusing factors, in the end, will he not simply do what every politician does and pursue his personal interests and pick somebody he can control even after he leaves office?
Yeah, it's very important. The big wigs have a lot of stake. If you tend to place them more and you elect somebody that every day, you see what happened between Accra the late Akai and Wallace,
Yes.
they'll be exchanging blows in cabinet meetings.
Yes.
It wouldn't speak well of the government. So in as much as he has the ultimate decision, it's very important he consult widely. Consultation doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to do what they want you to do, but at least you get an opinion about what people like and people may not like, so that can help you to be able to select a candidate that is kind of balancing to both wider opinions that exist in the party. But at the end of the day, I think he should look at competence, but also somebody he can work with. It's very important. Even if the candidate is, assuming John Mahama having somebody like maybe Martin Amadou as a running mate or vice president, I'm not saying you always agree, to be honest with you. You cannot always agree, especially if you have somebody who means well for the party. If you make a mistake, they'll speak to you. This is not right. So what he should be able to do is to get somebody that he can work with, somebody that they're able to understand each other, and somebody that is not, you can't be 100% perfect in terms of the people in the party that will support you, but somebody who is a little bit acceptable to all shades of opinion within the party, and then they should be able to work together. But what's more crucial moving forward, it's not just somebody he can work with actually, but somebody who can also lead the party, because it's very important. You don't introducing new candidates into election has a little bit of challenges. If you look at the Fourth Republic, once you are introduced, maybe you have to lose 1 or 2 elections before you are eventually elected. But we've never had, until John Mahama, we've never had an experience where a vice president, even when he was contesting as a vice president to president, he lost. He only, I think he won in 2012.
Yes.
But I think that's the first time we've had that kind of chain. When the late Aliu Muhammad tried, he didn't even succeed in securing the nomination to lead this party. But it still makes sense that if he's a vice president, he's been able to prove himself credible and do the right things. Marketing him becomes easier compared to just bringing in a new candidate.
Is it time for the NDC to consider a female running mate?
Yeah, it's a good thing to do, but he should be somebody who has a very huge influence and very strong people supporting his candidature. Other than that, it will not happen.
Let's wrap up with this. Post Kwesi Botwe committee, has the NDC changed in any way following the recommendations, which we don't know all of, but following the recommendations of the Kwesi Botwe?
So from the little that I know there have been a lot of reforms going on following from the Kwesi Botwe committee's report. Not all of them they haven't concluded all of them, but some of them are more advanced, others they haven't started even working on. So I think there are 2 levels of reforms they need to do. One, internal reforms that kind of build confidence within themselves, among themselves as a political party, bring that kind of consensus that's needed, not necessarily unity, consensus that's needed among key stakeholders to be able to govern and move the party forward. But second, and what is more crucial, is reforming the party to the outside world. I mean the other voter population within this country, because you are not just going to contest among NDC membership, you are contesting among the entire Ghanaian population, some of which are not even political. They don't have a political party, they don't care which government is in power, or what they care so much about is a government that's able to create an enabling environment for their businesses to triumph. So they have to appeal to these people as well and make reforms that will attract people who were not so much interested in what they do as a political party. Right. So I think reforms are going on, not exhaustive, but I think it's a sign that they are listening to the reasons that have caused their defeat in 2016.
Dr. Alidu, this has been enlightening. I've certainly enjoyed our interaction. Can't wait for the next one. Thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you so much, Kwedu. I'm so grateful.
Indeed. Dr. Seydou Alidu is a senior lecturer in the School of Political Science at University of Ghana. This is the AM show. My name is Kojo Yanks, and I'm doing this with Roland Walker. Mama Ofosu Abuaje is having breakfast with the newly elected chairman of the NDC. All that and more coming up after these messages. Well, it's been eventful, hasn't it?
Yes, it has been. Just like event over the weekend.
That's true. That's true. We're keeping the momentum going. Yes, and but we will not only do 2 days, we'll do 5. Eh? Yes, and this is day one of 5, and this is how we want to finish it off with a bang. Mama Biosu Abuaje, lucky her, is having breakfast with the newly elected national chairman of the NDC. We'll hand you over to her now so that she takes it away.
It's pretty shortly for us to have a conversation. Maybe breakfast, as Kojo Yangsing has already said. So I'm waiting to have that very first breakfast with the newly elected chairman of the National Democratic Congress. When I do, we'll bring you details of that conversation. Be sure that I would ask him to react to all the things that we've heard. We'll talk about his win, but also some of the things that have been said. For instance, statements made by Anita Desoso, and then criticisms also about this Congress, the fact that it went so many hours when we're talking about only 9,000 people. So lots of things to talk about with him as we have the very first breakfast.
Yes, indeed, the very first breakfast. I can't wait. I can't wait to watch that conversation when it goes down in a short while.
Well, definitely. But that'll be it for the show this morning.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been good. Well, let's continue as we've begun. More of this tomorrow. But stay with your station for the duration. So much more coming up on the Joy News channel. And if you want more news, go to myjoyonline.com. My name is Kojo Yangsing.
Mine is Roland Walker. Do have a great day. Bye.